Hi guys, I thought I'd do a quick video and talk a little bit about what the plans are for the motor. If you remember correctly, we were running the 368 quadrajet intake, and I had a little trouble in it not sealing well to the engine. It had a good imprint on the gasket. I think I just really chose the wrong gasket material. The imprint all the way around the port looks really good. But this gasket material, for some reason, seems to like wick the oil up. When we first pulled it off, it was just soaked in oil all the way to the top of the port. And it had just been pulling it up right through the gasket material. But rather than running this again, maybe trying a different gasket material, or I debated spray painting it to get it to not wick, I'm thinking about trying something else. Now, a couple of the guys complained that the dyno test wasn't real great, and we really didn't have accurate information off of this intake. But I was really trying to learn how to drive the dyno. This just happened to be on it, and I think we got good enough information. It's not perfect, I'll admit that, but good enough to at least show that this would work if you wanted to do it and you're working on a budget. Now remember, on this intake, I cut out the center, the quadrajet tubes, and I made it an open plenum. I didn't do anything to the runners. I just kind of opened up the plenum, and then I put an adapter plate on it so I could run a Holley carburetor. And I'm going to tell you, this ran really well on the dyno. And I had the engine up to 5,000 RPM several times, and it really sounded good. It ran good, had pretty good mixture. It really seemed nice. And I'd be more than willing to put that back on and run it. Now, the thing that guys have said is that these 368 intakes don't make power, and that wasn't a good test, and that doesn't really show that it would keep up with a 500 cubic inch motor. But that's not really true. And remember, on this intake, which I ran for years, I ran this intake for 6 years. Now this is also 368, but I ported the runners, and I opened up the plenum. Remember, these were 2-barrel throttle body intakes. And I opened up the plenum, and I made an adapter plate for it so I could run a Holley. And I ran this for years and years, and Terry ran it. And it runs very well. It really does. And I'm talking about on a stock motor. Now, if you start doing ported heads and a higher output and a lot more, then yeah, you're going to run out of intake. But if you're looking for something on a budget and you want it to be aluminum, either of these will work really well for a stock motor. And it made good power. I mean, we were basically at 300 horsepower and 500 foot-pounds, just like any good running 500 cubic inch motor is. I mean, CAD company has done plenty of tests and shows that's about what we make, and that's what we make with this intake, and yet it's lower profile and it's aluminum. And you didn't have to spend $500 like you do the other product. And if you were to run a quadjet, this one would even probably fit on an Eldorado because it's low profile. So those are good options. And like I said, I drove this one for years. It drove really nice. And the dyno runs that we did kind of backed up what I figured was going to happen. It backs up what they flow. And so even though it's not a perfect run, I think it was good enough to show that that really does work. Now, instead of doing these intakes, what I'm thinking about doing is going to the 460 intake. Now, I've had some of these adapters and intakes for decades, and I've never run them. And so I'm kind of curious to see how it goes. And if we happen to be able to get a little more dyno time, we might be able to do it on the same motor and kind of see what kind of horsepower we got out of it. Now, I put the Torquer 2 on the motor with an adapter plate as a quick mock-up to see how it goes. And in the group, the Cadillac 472-500 group, I will post a picture of kind of down the port and show you what it kind of looks like and how it lines up. This intake may flow a little high, and if we were to actually dyno test it, I might want to do both of these and see how they do. Plus I have the dual quad dual plane, which I would like to try and run. And Larry always said, Larry Kruzak, always said that was one of the best running intakes. Well, the interesting thing is when I looked at the flow number, it flows basically the same as a stock head. So that makes a lot of sense. Now, like I said, this one flows about 360, which is a little high. I mean, that would work real well for maybe a ported head. So I'm not sure it's a good choice for this motor or not. That's why I'm thinking about the Torker 1. This flows about 260, but the plenum is also different, and I'm going to have to work on the plenum a little. If you look, it doesn't really clear the 4-barrel, 4-hole part well. Some of that's because I milled the deck up here just a little bit. Some of it's by design, and if I remember correctly, they really meant this for like a 390 carburetor, I think it was. Which seems really odd for such a big motor. But anyway, I will open that up and get it to fit a little better. Also, looking at the adapter plate I have, it seems to be in the way of the thermostat housing just a bit. So I'm going to have to trim on that a little bit, and I need to put the dual quad dual plane on it, make sure it all fits. It's also way tight to the distributor. So I'm going to have to tweak that just a little bit, but that's also a good reason for me to try and run it, is I think we ought to put it on the motor. We know it's a good running motor, and see how it does. See how it runs, and like I said, hopefully maybe we can see what kind of power it makes. Now, I've got another motor that I'm going to dyno tomorrow, one of Cadco's crate motors that they're going to sell off. It's basically one that they put together, and so I need to run the dyno real quick on it and see that the power is, breaking the cam, make sure the power is working right, make sure it's running good, and then we'll put it on a pallet, and if anybody's interested in it, they can just buy a ready-to-go motor. It's not much of nothing. It's a regular stock intake, little bigger cam. I think it's like 215, 216 cam, slightly ported heads. We're not talking anything to jump up and down about a lot, but I would expect it to be about a 400 horsepower motor. So, hopefully maybe 400 horsepower, 550 foot-pounds, just a good basic motor. So I will try and maybe get some video on that. Certainly some pictures. I already took a few pictures. Got it all set up on the dyno today, so I should be able to run it tomorrow without any incident. But that's kind of where I'm working. I'm really thinking this is a good choice to try. I actually think that the Torker 1 on a stock motor will run better. The Torker 2, if we did ported heads, maybe down the road, we could always double check that. But it might be worth trying on here and see how it does. But that's the basic plan, and that's where I'm going. So I'm not going to put this back on. I did run it. I do know it runs. It did really well. I had good low-end power. It really sounded good, even at 5,000 RPM. The engine's doing good. I didn't spin any rockers. I mean, you guys keep thinking that the stock rockers at 5,000 RPM are just going to fly off the motor. Well, they just ran just fine. Didn't hiccup, didn't give me any trouble at all. And so, like I said, it's a good motor. This is the one that was the make it run motor, and we kind of called it the truck motor. That's the other thing. John didn't like the RPM that this was putting out. He didn't like torque at 2,500 RPM, and so he's kind of hoping maybe this intake up here will bump the RPM up a little bit, but I don't think so. So anyway, that's what we're going to do, and I'll keep you informed as to how it goes. I'm going to make sure everything fits so that I can swap at least the 3 intakes without a problem. I mean, it's completely dry intake, so it's easy to swap. It's literally just gaskets. I mean, we're not even getting into oil because the adapter doesn't have to come off. If you want, let me know in the comments, and I can do a little better video when I kind of getting this stuff going about the adapter plate and it bolted to the motor and the intake bolting to it, and so you understand it a little better. But that's the plan, and that's what I'm doing, and I hope all your projects are going well, and we'll talk to you later. So bye.